We've talked about the mafia, the last few episodes. We're talking about like the new mafia, like the tech billionaires.
And also, what is a billionaire's worst nightmare? A union.
Yes.
She's the killer. We saw her in the first couple episodes. Boom. It's going to be a long list of jumping till we get to...
That's it. This is our last episode.
Case solved.
Case solved. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are talking about the riveting comedy mystery series from Hulu, Only Murders in the Building, Season 5, Episode 4, Dirty Birds. So spoilers are ahead. And if you're enjoying our content, then a like would be appreciated. And because we're a small channel, we would greatly appreciate it if you would consider subscribing if you don't want to miss a single one of our breakdowns. And with that, I love this episode. I have to say that. But let's start off with the trio.
Great episode. I liked that, we're kind of digging in a little bit more to the billionaires. And I think that each one of these billionaires kind of complements one of the others that we see kind of later on, which is a lot of fun. It's always great to have this trio back. And their dynamic is always fun. It's always great. It's always we go with the jokes of that. Two old guys, friends with young millennial, and I'm glad to be back with them.
I feel like that makes it appeal to a wider... I mean, they actually said that, right? Like, this podcast appeals to a large demographic, which is, once again, them being kind of meta about the fact that I think this show appeals to such a wide demographic because it covers so much. I don't think I realized that Charles is kind of nerdy. And I've noticed that, he has like all of these facts in his pocket. I don't know. He's not like your stereotypical nerd that you see in TV and movies, where they're into comics and they're into science, Instead, it's just like he's into these like niche areas. He knows a lot of facts and he's a little bit socially awkward. And so I feel like he's not your stereotypical nerd. And so it's not quite as obvious that like he's a little bit of that.
Yeah. And it is a little interesting to me that he never bonded with Lester about his birding because they're both birders. But it was fun to see Vince Fish and him be able to bond with the birding, their little calls that they knew together. Like, that's not how birds call. Those are crazy calls. But yet they have this knowledge of how these birds call in their, world, essentially.
It was so good to see Vince Fish back. It makes me hopeful that we see many more faces. And already, we saw Bunny, we saw Tim Kono. Not that we really love Tim Kono because we barely saw him in the first season. We saw a bunch of other faces, and it's good to kind of see these people. And so maybe we see the like Christmas sweater guy. Maybe we see the Sauce family. I would love it if we can see more of these people. I'm a huge fan of Kumail Nanjiani, so I'd really like to see his character is one of my absolute favorites.
And hopefully he gave up the Christmas stuff because, he hates Christmas. We don't want him to be a Christmas influencer anymore. So hopefully he gets out of that. Was Thee... I was trying to remember back to the first season. It's been so long since I've seen the first season. Was she in the first season?
I really don't remember.
Okay, let us know in the comments if you remember. I believe she was, because after watching Mabel and her's dynamic in this episode, I really felt like I was like, wait a minute. I think she was friends with her in that season. So let me know if I'm wrong. I know we saw her in the flashback with her and Tim Kono, but I'm not sure if she was there or not. So let us know in the comments if you remember.
So the murder board that Vince Fish and Oliver worked on, I have potentially some thoughts here.
I'm very curious.
So I theorized last time that the four birds probably represent people. I think that part was pretty obvious. I came up with some ideas of how they could kind of match up, which I think were mostly correct. Although there are some differences. And I think one line that's kind of a little throwaway from Vince Fish could explain why I still could be correct.
Okay.
So Vince Fish, called Lester an optimist and basically said that like he's not always great at identifying birds, which means that Vince Fish and Lester might disagree as to like which bird represents which person. And so that could throw them off if they get a clue about like, this bird was here at this time. That might kind of throw them off if it turns out it's the wrong person that they're looking at. So let's walk through the birds.
Okay.
We've got Nicky Cacciamilio, brown-headed cowbird, mafia-like behavior. I said that this one was the one that puts its eggs in other ones' nests, which I was correct about. I theorized that like it could represent a person that is hiding themselves. But, later on as I looked at the bird facts, it does say that they do have this like mafia-like retaliatory behavior to birds that try to like oust their eggs. So I do think that matches.
Okay.
So I think I would like pick the wrong behavior, but I do like this match. So I approve of that one. Camilla White, bowerbird. This is the one that makes these huge, elaborate nests. And that's what I said. And here we have somebody that like that fits.
I mean, she definitely redecorated Oliver's house into a lavish place. So I think that could possibly work for that.
I love how they have like each of these rooms are so different that they provide interesting backdrops. And I like that they even like sometimes change them over time. And I feel like this was an excuse to get like a new locale. Like Mabel got a new place last season because she moved into like the West Tower. And then like this season, she's kind of like redone it, to make it her own. And so I feel like they keep like getting new spaces and modifying things. And this was probably just like an excuse for them to get like a fun new backdrop. J Flug, Eurasian Jay. This one, the connection between the person and the bird wasn't explained. They just described J Flug.
Well, because the Eurasian J and J, that's what they came to, is that, and Eurasian J is J Flug.
But that's not,
it has nothing to do with the bird, but that's
all of the other ones are like characteristics. That's just surface level. That's its name.
Yeah.
And this is the one that I said the Eurasian Jay is part of the corvid family, mainly blackbirds, although this one isn't like a black bird. And that family is a very smart family of birds. To me, that smart aspect fits Bashsteed, who is the smartest person in the world.
But so like you were saying that, most corvids are black and the Eurasian Jay is blue, which would make him a black sheep, and he is a black sheep of his family, and that could potentially make sense with the Eurasian Jay. I might poke holes in all of your theories at the end of your little thing, but we'll see.
Is he a black sheep, or is that like part of what they do is like pivot when there's unpopular opinion and like rebrand themselves and do like other shisty things in order to try and win themselves over with the... Well, we'll get into this stuff. Okay. Bashsteed, the kakapo. This is, and it was because it's, a bird that has a very long lifespan and he is very old. Yeah, that matches up. But also I just kind of felt like the smart thing matched up a little bit better with Bash. And if this didn't line up with him, then I thought that another one of the characteristics about this, that it is a nocturnal bird, could point to somebody who is nocturnal, like maybe somebody from the mafia, something like that, that's like seedy, generally does their business at nighttime, and so is kind of nocturnal. That's just a thought. There's another throwaway line, which is important here. So normally there's a whole flock of people in the Velvet Room. Last Saturday, there were only 5 people. And yet, we only see 4 bird names. So there's definitely somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it? Why are they not listed?
Okay, well, to answer your question, I personally think that it could be something we saw, right? Because when we saw them explaining the 4 people and the 4 birds, there was one person that was in those pictures that was not associated with a bird. And do you know who that was?
Who was that? And in what pictures?
On the murder board.
Okay, on the murder board.
So we said we have four people, right? 4 birds to associate with. There was another person in one of those pictures that didn't have a bird associated with them. Okay. And that was Cachemillo's. I'm saying it wrong. I said I would have it right this time.
Cacio e Pepe, remember.
Cacio e Pepe. Cacio e Pepe. This is terrible. That's insensitive to me. Cachemillo, his wife was in the picture with him.
Okay.
So that makes me believe that potentially she might know more than she's letting on, right? You know, she's the one that's kind of like, oh, we're a fake mafia. We spent all of our money on this house. But yet we see Cachemillo, he is literally running this big high stakes gambling thing with the like richest people in the world. So why would she say that it's basically falling apart? We have no money. There's no mafia. We're just nothing. And yet these guys kind of confirmed that there was something. So to me, it seems like she might be in deeper on this than she's letting on.
Do you think that she knew about her husband's death and she was like covering for herself by hiring these people to make it like for her missing husband to make it look like I care about him and I don't know why he's missing? And then later when the body is found, she can be like, I tried to get help.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, right? It's like we kind of know that he was frozen and that his body was set up. Yeah. And so I do think there is a piece of her that knows about this or had known about it. And so, or it's going to be like another red herring where eventually they like come to pieces like, okay, well, there was 5 people there. Who was the 5th person? Oh, Taya Leone, maybe. Mrs. Cachemillo. I don't know why I want to say it wrong. So that's partially what I think. Now, my one, also, not to poke holes in your whole bird theory.
Sure.
We got Dirty Birds, the title of it.
Yes.
The birds are associated with these people. And we see the birds in the opening intro.
Yes.
What if, again, a red herring, these are not the birds that they're talking about? I said last week that I think maybe it might be some of the brothers. I could be wrong on that. But it also could be something to do with Mayor Tillman and like the union of doormen. So I could see, since so early on that like, I think that birds are the biggest clue that...
Right.
Or I don't even know if it's the biggest clue yet, but like birds are a pretty big clue. And we're like, we instantly point to them being these 3 billionaires and Cachemillo himself. So I could see that these birds, this is a red herring, that we are looking at these people that might have something to do with it, even though I don't think any of them are the murderers. So the birds could be related to others.
Yes, I could see that. However, there were a bunch of gambling terms on that page, and there were dollar amounts, which definitely does make it seem like they are people that were, and it was on, I think, Saturday. Now, all of that could be red herring. Definitely could be red herring. However, if we continue with the idea that there were 5 people and only 4 birds listed, the other idea that I have is, why would Lester, if this is not a red herring, why would Lester not record somebody?
Right. Unless he looked like just how Vince saw it, he looped Cachemillo and his wife into one set of birds, like the cow head. Potentially. I don't know. There is a lot of
What if
Oh.
what if it's not somebody he let in around this time for this? What if it's somebody who's already in the building?
Ooh. Because you're right, he is giving the bird names to people coming into the building.
At Saturday night for this group.
And so somebody already in the building. Okay, do you have a theory of who it might be in the building?
I do have an idea.
Okay.
Okay. So, speaking of familiar faces, in episode 1, we did see Ursula. Season 1, season 2, she's the building manager of the Arconia and is a known hustler and scammer who regularly tries to get the tenants to purchase additional things such as gut milk.
Oh, yes. I remember her now.
Her office is in the basement of the Arconia.
Interesting. I didn't know that we knew that her basement or her office was there, but that could track that it could be her, and she's the killer. We saw her in the first couple episodes. Boom. She's the only one that doesn't have a bird associated to her. It's going to be a long list of jumping till we get to Ursula.
That's it. This is our last episode. We don't even need to do
solved.
Case solved.
Our podcast, Finding Out the Murderers, has been closed.
Yeah, and if our track record holds, then the fact that we've said this, it's probably like 95% chance that we are wrong. So
I would say it's 100% chance we're wrong, because I don't think we've ever once guessed the murderer before.
I guessed Marshall.
Yeah,
but it wasn't until like later.
It was a throwaway.
I also made like 30 other guesses. I think I probably guessed everybody in the cast.
That's how we do this. This is how we win our podcast. We guess every single person, so inevitably we are right.
We'll definitely be right. There was another familiar, friendly face in the building, though not a face.
The AI?
Who was it?
Lester?
This would be the person's third time on the show, and each time playing a different character.
Paul Rudd? Was it Paul Rudd?
Paul Rudd!
He was Oh man, I did not even pick up on that was Paul Rudd.
And he's uncredited, so like that seems like the kind of like dumb fun thing that he would do just because he thinks it's funny. Like it reminds me of like the running gag on Conan of showing the clip from
Macamee. Yeah.
Yes, like he just does stuff because it's fun.
I recently saw he went on a podcast. I don't know if you saw this one. He went on a podcast and he like had bandages all over his face and like open wounds that like were burns, and he like acted like he had burns on his face, and it popped up and I like had to look. I was like, wait a minute, did he really get burns on his face? And it was just like, and he plays it dead serious, like, it was really painful. I thought it was gonna be way worse. And just selling like he just has burns all over his face.
Oh, my goodness.
Paul Rudd is a treasure. One thing, speaking of like the AI, one thing I do love about Only Murders in the Building is they tackle things in like this meta way of like, current events. And so recently, the prevalence of AI has grown in the last year, and them kind of like taking a whack at it, which also kind of leads me to believe that the Christoph Waltz guy might be AI.
Okay.
Because they keep making jokes about how old he is. He's had transplants, like, oh, what war were you part of? I feel like there might be, and he acts very robotic, and they kind of like hinted at it. So part of me feels like he might just be an AI person.
He reminds me more of like an amalgamation of a bunch of CEOs. He reminds me a little bit of like Mark Zuckerberg in terms of like his wealth, power, his ability to just like buy things up that are a problem to him. Like instead of competing with Instagram, we'll just buy Instagram. Boom.
Instead of competing with the podcast, we'll buy the company that owns your podcast.
Yes, exactly. And then also, and he has that awkwardness that Mark Zuckerberg has of like seeming kind of robotic, although obviously Mark Zuckerberg is having his like second awakening when he's, being this like curly haired, cool looking dude now.
We love you, Mark Zuckerberg. Don't enslave us, please.
And then there's a CEO. I don't remember what he's a CEO of. It might be like an anti-aging company.
Brian Johnson
is the one like, and doesn't he like take plasma from his son or something?
Yeah.
He has this whole regiment that reminds me very like when Christoph Waltz said the thing about like, I don't eat after 11 a.m.
Right. That you're right. It is very Brian Johnson coded. I think recently it came out that...
Don't tell me he's dead.
If he's not dead. He's not doing so well with his whole anti-aging crusade, but don't quote me on it. But I think he's getting brushed under the rug. But yeah, that I do kind of get that. Yeah, okay, maybe he does give me the awkward CEO vibe. Maybe not.
And like out of touch CEO that's like so removed from any kind of normal person that like, he made the comment about like, as long as your servants don't mind.
Right. Oh, well, we could help cook. Yeah, as long as your servants don't mind. And he had like a whole group of guys following him, bodyguards. If you're a robot, why would you need bodyguards? But still, part of me thinks that maybe he's got like a chip implant or something, like Neuralink.
I feel like with, having a trio of billionaires, they're able to do a good job of representing a decent span of that spectrum. We already mentioned Bastide and some of his characteristics. Jay Flug reminds me a little bit of like the Sacklers.
Pretend like I don't know who the Sacklers are and explain it to me like I don't know them.
So the Sacklers are one of the ones that got caught up that were part of like the whole opioid thing, so they own a huge pharmaceutical business. And I knew of the Sacklers before. I mean, they were definitely part of that. I didn't know of their pharmaceutical aspect being, coming from outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia and having gone to the Smithsonian museums many times. One of the museums is called the Sackler Gallery. It is, it is only art that was donated by the Sackler family. And the story kind of reminds me of that, of like Jay's family originally created faucets that gave people lead poisoning. That reminds me kind of like opioids that like addicted people. And then they create this like pharmaceutical business in order to create a drug to cure the like the sickness.
Poison. Yeah, right.
And so like they like do this in order to change their image, but really they're just like making money off of a problem that they created. Then they have this huge philanthropic wing. It's talking about how like, he opened this like big philanthropy organization. And it reminds me of how the Sacklers, have donated a ton of art, in order to be relevant in the world and get like goodwill. And it's kind of a BS way to donate stuff because it like this is complicated stuff. And so I'm probably like wrong on a bunch of things and maybe like oversimplifying things, but you can falsely drive up the value of art. If you then donate it as like a tax write-off, like just because it's worth that much doesn't mean you spent that much. And and then also, like it gains them like influence, which gains them power so that they can get away with more. And so it reminds me very much of like that.
And also he kind of looks like the other guy. I think his name is Martin Scarelli, something like that.
Yes.
He looks like Scarelli, who actually went to jail for pharmaceutical fraud and stuff.
Yeah.
So he kind of also gives me that vibe. So then who is our last one? You know who she reminds me of?
There's two I'm kind of in between. Who are you thinking?
Well, I was thinking Martha Stewart because she's the first female-made billionaire off of her brand. That's kind of what gave me her vibe, was just she was kind of Martha Stewart-y. You know, seems wholesome, you know, very like, and I watched the Martha Stewart documentary, great watch. And I actually feel bad for Martha and love that she is kind of making a comeback, but she kind of gives this vibe of like home designer, you know, really homemaker, trying to like make these fancy dinners, throw lavish parties, do a bunch of renovations. And that with what she did to Oliver's house really gave me that vibe of a Martha Stewart type person. Yeah.
Also, she seemed very manicured and very like put together and doing things in a very certain way, being like off put by hard K's and loud noises. And it definitely seemed like a whole vibe that she was doing that's like part of this outward facing persona.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because I feel like Jay Flug also has an outward facing persona, but he pretends that his isn't fake. Like, I think everybody knows that like Martha Stewart, not to say that she's fake, but she has a brand. And so everything is like very on brand. And so you know that like she can't be this exact same person when she's not behind the camera.
Right. It's like a very manicured.
Yes.
What she presents people.
Yes. Versus like Jay Flug seems very, you know, hip and cool, and like he's, you know, not presenting to be something different. But then he clearly is.
When you were saying that there was two people that she reminded you of, who was the other one that?
I was thinking maybe like Gwyneth Paltrow with like Goop.
There might be a case of that in there.
Because like there was, she brought some kind of like ointment cream, something in like a tub, you know, which to me I thought of as potentially goopy. But I do actually think it's a little bit more Martha Stewart, because it didn't seem like she was selling snake oil like Gwyneth Paltrow does.
We also love you, Gwyneth Paltrow. Don't come kill us.
Sure, I love her and stuff, but I don't think that you should be buying her jade eggs and, you know, like that's...
Or her goop. Nobody wants to buy her goop. Yeah, that's...
Yeah. I think her vitamins or something like that. There's a thing she has, and I think it's basically the same thing that the dude at InfoWars sells.
I mean, anybody that sells supplements like that is a snake oil salesman, in my opinion. But
yeah.
Also, InfoWars guy, don't come get me.
Versus like Martha Stewart, she does make things for it. Like she creates recipes. She creates like real products that I think have a real tangible benefit. And yes, you may disagree with her, but I think that like the things that she creates does have some kind of benefit.
100%.
You know?
I did like that it did seem that, you know, like in the last season, we had the celebrities who were playing each one of them. So they definitely had reflections of them, and they were trying to be these people. And it did seem that these three also have a little bit of, you know, reflective capacity of each of the main trio. And, you know, they go off and they interrogate them. So we have like Jay and Mabel, who, you know, seem young. He's able to like talk to her. Granted, they're not similar in finances or probably like morality, but, you know, there were a little bit of like connections there. We also see Charles and Bash, as they are very awkward.
They're the awkward ones.
They're the awkward ones, but like also like kind, and like, you know, Bash is like really nice to Charles, like helps him get his mother's recipe, which also I think that was great, having that little scene of Steve Martin on Regis filming. Because I think that was a real clip from the show. And they just like dubbed over the parts when you weren't looking with talking about the duck à l'orange.
I mean, it definitely was the first time that we've had a believable look at Steve Martin young in the show.
Because I looked at that and I was like, oh, that's what young Steve Martin looks like.
Yes, because like obviously your body is different with age, and so like I don't think he has the same metabolism, and he is by no means fat. But when he puts on the young makeup, he is nowhere near as thin as young Steve Martin, and he just looks like an old Steve Martin with a wig on and a little bit of makeup to like do the I talked about that. Like, this isn't a huge budget show. They're not doing the whole like digital de-aging. And honestly, I love the show so much I don't care if they don't do that stuff too often where it's like constantly in your face.
Yeah. And then we see, you know, Oliver and I forget her name. Renee Zellweger's.
She is Camila White.
Camila White. So he, you know, Oliver, we've already talked about, very narcissist, very about appearances, what he looks like, you know, his drapes, his clothes, you know, he is very concerned with, you know, because he's a narcissist. And so with her, I think that she does kind of give off that like that almost Martha Stewart thing of like, this is what I'm presenting you because I don't want you to think any less of me. And it is kind of like that narcissism echoing of each other's personalities.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
We've seen the podcast grow for them. You know, they were originally recording on like their own stuff. They got a little bit better. And now they've actually signed a deal, which also complicates everything with the Dirty Birds. Now, what do you think is the implications for the show moving forward? Like, are they going to stay in this contract for 3 years? Are they going to get out of it? Like, I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
I see two possible outs. So possible out number one is that they find some legal loophole and they're able to escape via, actually I could see like three possible outs, you know, like they find a loophole, they get out. There's some reason that the tech billionaires decide to drop this. And so, you know, like maybe they don't want their money tied up. They want to purchase something else. And so maybe they drop it. And then I could see this being something that continues going forward because it's a beautiful backdrop. And so it would be great to have scenes in here. And so I could see it going forward. And the way it goes forward is like we have so much focus on these three that it feels like they're probably not the murderers because we're focusing too hard on them. And generally, when the show focuses hard on somebody, it's not that person.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Though I don't necessarily think that they will stay on this contract, right? Like, I don't think. And the only reason I feel that way is the lady that was showing them around just had this like very fake, almost like seedy vibe to her. You know, I feel like, and maybe that's like the whole structure of the like corporation aspect of the podcast where, yeah, it's going to look good for Mabel and she could show off to Thee and be like, oh, look, see, I did make it, you know, like I have this deal that I told you about. But also seeing that like maybe it seemed like the grass was greener over there, but ultimately getting there, like we have the drunk sluts, their words, not mine, you know, making their podcast that looked like just rowdy people. And so like, it just felt like the whole vibe of like what they are going for, Only Murders in the Building, like that doesn't fit with who they are. So I do see them not staying in this contract in one way or another.
And I could see that being strong growth for Mabel, you know, in terms of her learning to accept herself, you know, and not comparing herself to Thee is in leaving this, you know, finding a loophole to get out and choosing to take that loophole is saying, I am fine as who I am and I don't need to measure myself against this other person. I could definitely see that.
I could see something like, they were like, you can't speak about the owners in a negative light. And I could see something coming out about one of the owners that makes them either have to sell the company or they are disgraced. And then maybe a loophole in the contract is like, oh, if the company changes ownership, you have a moment to renegotiate your contract and get out of there. So I could see them getting out of it. I think it's going to be a great backdrop for the season of them making this podcast. But I think by the end, the status quo will change and they'll be out.
Definitely. I did think that there is a potential really fun character that we could meet. So we theorized that we probably are going to meet the union people.
Yeah.
And I think that we could possibly meet Thee's publicist, who's a psychic and a hired assassin. That seems like a very fun character. And so I'm definitely excited about that. And I do think that you are very right about meeting the union people, because like we've talked about the mafia, the last few episodes where we're talking about like the new mafia, like the tech billionaires. And the mafia had a strong hand in labor unions. Like they found that as like another way to make money. They would sometimes like infiltrate these and siphon off money from the unions, or use the power of the unions to like offer lawmakers, the support of the union, and in return they wouldn't get investigated by the police or whatever. And so there's like strong ties to the mafia.
And also, what is a billionaire's worst nightmare? A union. So I could also see that, especially at the end of this episode, it was like, they put the cherry on top that was just like, we're the billionaire class. We're playing different games. Like, you have to be 10 steps ahead of everybody. We win, 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 win. And like, that's kind of what we saw. Like at the end, they were like, oh, we beat them. We beat them. We beat them. They're playing checkers. We're playing chess kind of mentality. And I could see them being brought down by the union.
Yeah.
Like they get their comeuppance in a way by a union taking them down. And that could also be why Lester was a target. Not saying that these guys were the murderers, but Lester being part of the union that had maybe dirt on billionaires. That's why we got to get rid of him.
I could definitely see that. I do have one last thing, which is I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about the trio. I'm a little worried about Charles.
Yeah.
I know he's showing like a good positive face, but between the drugs he was taking episode or a few back, and now the new exercises he's doing that we haven't seen him do before, it almost feels like he knows something bad health-wise and is trying to do everything he can to get past it. And hopefully it's just like age.
I definitely agree, but when I saw him doing the exercises, I thought it's because he's going to try to hit on Cachemilio's wife. Like, that's why he was like, I'm just getting in shape. I just do this because, like, I want to look good for Cachemilio. And what made me kind of believe this was that, we look at, he was like, Mabel's got this going on and Oliver's got this going on. So, like, you're going to get married, you're married, you have your wife, this. And he's like, I think he's feeling a little left out and like a little bit like on his own. And so I think he's doing these exercises, and maybe we'll get a little tease that he's been secretly like going on a date with Cachemilio's wife during this. Potentially, we haven't really seen the time for him to have done that. But I do think that, but I am worried about him still with the seeing dead people.
Okay, yeah. Seeing dead people taking drugs, still not good. I do like that idea, and I am hopeful that you're correct on that.
Because I also don't see them being able to end only murders in the building with one of them gone, or like...
Oh, yeah.
So...
No, definitely.
This can't be a long-term thing in my eyes.
No, but they did this in season 2 or 3 where Oliver was having the heart issues.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
But I would hope that they wouldn't do that again, where it's like a health scare and then they kind of like drop that plot line, because like generally that stuff is more ongoing than
Right.
Although it was stress based, so maybe now that he wasn't was it while he was putting together the musical? Is that why? I don't remember what it was, but it was something, I think, stress based.
I can't remember if it was the musical or if it was he was worried about his son not being his. I can't remember. They all kind of bleed together, but I think
because I felt like it was season 2, so I think you might be right about the son.
Yeah, I think it was all of him. It was him freaking out about if he was truly the father of his son, and he found out he wasn't, and it was, I think that was not upsetting because the son still accepts him and he loves him, and so I don't think I think that's what was able to calm his heart down, but I don't know.
Yes, that makes sense. And honestly, like in the end, that's the most important thing is like the love and acceptance. Once he realized he had that, then it's like, it doesn't matter if you're biologically mine or not.
Right. But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along. And like we mentioned before, since we are a small channel, if you enjoyed this content, a subscribe would be appreciated. But until next time, when we tackle Only Murders in the Building Season 4, Episode 5, we'll see you next week. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.